Hello.
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 Hello. Welcome to another edition of Thinking Like a Lawyer. I was trying to fake you out there, but it doesn't seem like it worked.
Well, you're not great at subterfuge, so.
Okay. That's fine.
Fancy word today. We're coming in hot.
gotta start. You gotta start hot.
Great. Well,
Guess who's back?
I'm Joe Patrice from Above the Law. You heard Kathryn Rubino, who is back from her illness and has decided to choose violence. We also heard from Chris Williams in there. How are you?
I am doing significantly better. As you mentioned, I was ill last week. It was not COVID. That's what multiple COVID tests tell me. But it turns out that while the vaccine does in fact protect you against COVID, masks help with everything else. So now that the largely maskless world has taken over, colds are a thing again.
Yeah.
Colds and, not my favorite thing, but, it was like 2019 or something crazy.
And it was not your favorite thing. I do know what your favorite thing is, which is the beginning of small talk.
You wanted to. This is why I choose violence. If you were curious, folks, this is why, because that's the crap I have to deal with.
Well, your life is hard. You have to listen to one sound effect.
First of all, we all know, regular listeners are well aware, there's going to be more than one. There is. And let's be clear, the sound effects are merely a symptom. The problem is that you enjoy annoying people.
I find that to be untrue.
Okay, let's go to the third base coach. Chris, what say you?
That is the biggest bullshit I've seen chat since my time in Texas. That was peak bullshit. I'm actually impressed. I mean, I've seen a lie or two, but that was a lie. And I'm honored actually to be in the same virtual room and take part of such dishonesty.
And we have a birthday.
That's right. Happy birthday, Chris.
Woo!
See? Violence.
That was terrifying. Never again. You don't have to ever give me a gift again, Joe. I'm very good.
Yeah. All right.
Do you have any big birthday plans?
So, I mean, I'm saying this for the benefit of the listeners. I don't know, in their cars? Where do people listen to podcasts? Anyway, right now,
probably. Some people are probably listening in their car, maybe on a treadmill, perhaps.
Maybe. Shout out to Peloton. But yeah, so my mom's getting my hair retwisted my locks, and after that, I have a long day planned of probably finding some judge who decided to soft slur somebody in a housing case or something. You know how the job goes, and then maybe some sleep. Tomorrow I'm leaving to go to St. Louis. I'll be there for a week. The Black Law Student Association is having a banquet, and it's hard to pass up an opportunity to look spiffy and see friends. So yeah, that's going to be fun.
Nice.
Excellent. Well,
how was your past weekend, Joe?
It was good. I went to Las Vegas for the opening weekend of the tournament.
Basketball, we're talking here.
Indeed. It was interesting. I'd never done that before. I'll tell you, it was not to cast aspersions on a whole location, but it lost a lot of its luster now that you
Words are hard.
Now that you can gamble anywhere.
On your telephono.
Yeah, no, and the apps that they have there for gambling are not nearly as robust as the ones here in New York. So I was a little disappointed.
So you went to Vegas to gamble less.
That is what it turned out. But hey, the under keeps hitting, so. The
under has not been bad in the opening weekend of the NCAA basketball tournament, but everything else has been a disaster, at least for my bracket. I don't know.
Yeah. You put too much faith in the SEC, I think, is your problem.
That is a problem.
Yeah.
That is certainly a problem. Yeah, I have a family bracket pool, and I'm apparently the commissioner because I'm the only one who, understands the sporting, and I am not in first. My mother, who literally picked things based on, well, I know didn't your cousin go there? That's how she picked her teams and is in first. I think partially because my uncle went to St. Peter's. So
yeah,
I think that helped. I think that helped. But just goes to show the more you know about sports, the worse your bracket usually is.
All right. Well, feel like that's a good transition for us to transition out of.
But see, you're gonna
small talk.
I mean,
yeah,
I deserved that.
You did.
I walked right into it like a damn buzzsaw.
So
that was so good. That was so good.
Was it? Was it?
Yeah,
good?
it's the.
Or was it awful?
Nothing says Monday like Schadenfreude, whatever the word is. And like just to see
Schadenfreude.
Yeah, and it was that. I felt it. I felt your pain, and it was lovely.
Yeah. So, but it's a good transition, I guess. Well, because we were talking about the brackets, so I think we can talk. One thing we will hype up for people who haven't already participated is the annual Above the Law Bracket Challenge is going on right now, where we take some stories from the previous year and
or
use
legal
those
concepts. I think
legal
one of the
concepts. Yeah,
we did. I think best true crime bracket a couple of years ago. We've done best fictional lawyer. We've done worst law school. We do those kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, but it's a good opportunity for us to revisit some of our old stories, generally speaking, in a betting format. So our bracket is up. We're already through the first round. We're down to what we're calling, I guess, the silly 16, because the NCAA sues people who use the word sweet 16. So
how about the stupid 16?
Yeah, that could be true too. Yeah, I like that.
So how'd you come up with the concept for this year's bracket, Joe?
I did not. Our colleague Stacey Zaretsky did, but
Stacey.
But she pitched the idea that we had a almost frightening number of stories of really bad lawyering out of the Trump administration and the Trump affiliated lawyers over the last couple of years. And she said we could put together a bracket of which of them did the most to destroy their reputation. And so we've got that going.
Who's the overall number one, though?
I mean, Rudy was the overall number one. I mean,
this
is a person who had at one point been considered a front runner to be president, and now he does cameos to make ends meet. So
to pay some legal bills.
Yeah. But yeah, no, we have some good matchups this round, and some really serious ones looming. I mean, Alan Dershowitz is still out there. Sidney Powell's still out there. We got
there's a query about the Dershowitz, because I think that's the other one whose reputation has just fallen tremendously, right? But were there other things besides involvement in Trumpland that caused his reputation to take a tank?
I don't understand what you can possibly be talking about. But yeah, so there obviously there's a few overlapping issues. That is not the only person who has some unfortunate involvement with the Epstein story. Oh, well, actually it is now, because Ken Starr got upset in the first round.
Ooh, who took out Ken Starr?
Paul Davis. Not Paul Davis. Who did? Oh, Lindsey Graham, I think, took him out.
You know, all things. These are all things.
Paul Davis is now in a matchup straight up with Sidney Powell. That is a dangerous one right there. That said, she is currently the strongest contender in the entire thing. She won her opening round matchup by over 99%. So
who's she against?
Who was the most minor of the Kraken people? I can't remember. Jane Raskin or something like that.
So at least that makes some sense why she won by such a strong margin, because it was apples to apples as a comparison, right? So it's like the person who popularized Kraken as a legal concept versus somebody else on the team. So sure.
Right, but I will say she got more votes than voted in some of the other matchups.
Oh, really?
People showed up just to vote for her and then
who's
disappear.
The worst? Sidney Powell.
Yeah.
Next.
So it's a fun thing we do every year. It's a good opportunity to read through, see some old stories, remind yourself that somebody actually thought we should turn the government over to the hobbits. These sorts of things. That is a real thing that happened, and it's
very, very real.
And it was Paul Davis. So we'll see if that was enough to overcome Sidney.
Also, the fictional character matchup, right? It's the Kraken versus the Hobbit law.
Ooh.
So I think that's a little spin on that part of the bracket.
I like that. I'm still writing that one up. So now maybe I'll use that.
You can have my permission to use it as much as you would like.
Okay. Well, cool.
I didn't choose violence today.
Fair enough. So voting on this round is going to run until Thursday night. Then on Friday, we'll unveil the next group, have that vote over the weekend, and just kind of keep going till we get, a true champion. So that's exciting. Anyway.
Wait, would it be
time?
Uh-oh.
I want to finish
Hold
that
the phone.
Yeah, hold up. Shouldn't we have somebody answer that for us so that we could keep on the business that we need to do and concentrating on what we need to do while somebody else handles that?
Well, I can't.
Yeah, so let's hear from Posh.
As a lawyer, ever wish you could be in two places at once? You could take a call when you're in court, capture a lead during a meeting. That's where Posh comes in. We're live virtual receptionists who answer and transfer your calls so you never miss an opportunity. And the Posh app lets you control when your receptionist steps in. So if you can't answer, Posh can. And if you've got it, Posh is just a tap away. With Posh, you can save as much as 40% off your current service provider's rates. Start your free trial today at posh.com.
All right, so before I cut you off with the phone ringing, I did not know you were going to add something there, Chris. So what was it?
Well, I was going to make some dumb joke about asking if they were going to be the champion or the biggest loser.
Yeah, so that is basically what this is going to be.
It's the Biggest Loser without, the eating disorders.
Yeah.
Good.
As far as we know.
Yeah.
Well, without the, glorifying eating disorders, which is what, in fact, the Biggest Loser does.
I'll be honest, I've never seen that show or read about it. I just know that it was that's a catchy ass name, Fat phobia aside, it's some really good.
Sure.
Really good name lately.
So I guess what do we want to talk about next? Do we want to talk about criminal law here? So there was a big case recently where was it Georgia found out that the Georgia law enforcement found out you can't actually stretch things to the breaking limit. Yeah.
So this happened recently. The Georgia Police Department, so basically probably taxpayers are forced to pay out $900,000 to about 64 young adults who were all charged with one single bag of weed back in 2017 at a combo New Year's Eve birthday party, which it sucks to get busted like that at a birthday party. Sucks to get busted like that at a New Year's Eve party. But to really go for the combo, it shows their commitment to protecting and serving the community. I mean, there had to be somebody had to know that they had a calendar access. Somebody leaked the calendar. But yeah, I think the numbers fall out to being each person gets around $15,000 after you factor in fees and whatnot. But it was ridiculous.
So the crux of it so there were 64 people. There was how much? It was an ounce or something along those lines.
An ounce of weed, which was probably mid. If you know how mad I would be if I got hit with a charge for having an ounce of weed that wasn't mine, but two, if it was Reggie, if it looked like it was mostly just thyme and a smidgen of oregano, I'd have been so pissed off. I would have been mad. I hope it was some quality stuff, but it probably wasn't. It was 2017.
The problem here, of course, is that if you're going to claim that you have some sort of probable cause that someone's, dealing drugs or something like that, it's hard to do that it's hard to use that as the hook you're hanging your hat on when you're saying that 64 people are all equally responsible for dealing an ounce. It becomes a little difficult when you're talking about microscopic levels of sales to make an actual probable cause.
That's homeopathic drug dealing is what it is.
It's microdosing, but really microdosing. Yeah. It's nanodosing.
That's selling weed in the same way that LaCroix is fruit flavored, And and my thing is some dude is yeah, we're protecting the community. Fucking teenagers, who do you think they are? People got, I don't know if they got, I hope nobody got records off of this, but the fact that probably some grown ass man in a group of grown ass men did this to teenagers and went home that night and were yeah, I'm just protecting the community. The gall it takes to do that is cause it's easy to get bogged down in the legality of it and be oh, well, there's actually other cases where people have charged, say, an entire car of people when a smidgen of marijuana was found. But really, this was a bunch of kids at a birthday party. That's what you did with your time. That blows my mind.
The unfortunate part about this is if law enforcement had been even remotely smarter, we may never have heard of this story. If they could have potentially rolled in and said, these 3 people are responsible, and it may not have ever reached this point. It was the sheer ridiculousness of trying to tag 64 people with an ounce that brought it to the fore. And so I think that's always the reminder that people should take away from this, is that while this is an extreme instance, this sort of really pushing the limits of the constitutionality of these sorts of arrests is happening. For every one of these that you hear, there's a lot more where they're unfortunately craftier.
Yeah. Well, it's not great.
No.
When are we going to legalize marijuana again?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if anything, this is a reason to smoke. Like knowing that people decided to do this and thought it was a good idea.
See, my concern
And
is
then
again,
that it went to trial. Like it didn't look like it was like a straight up settlement. Like people actually said, yeah, let's get some.
Waste
put
a
some
lot of
man-hours
time and
on
effort.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there was people like, yeah, no, the police were justified in charging 64 teenagers with this ounce. Like, really?
I mean, the problem is you get prosecutors who feel they're in too deep because they can't let this go, because as soon as they let this go, somebody's going to push when they tried to tag 7 people with one, whether it's drugs or a gun or whatever. So they need to fight every battle to keep the system rolling.
Well, that did not work out well for them in this instance.
Mercifully, in this instance, it did not. But yeah, it's worth keeping in mind at all times that this is the sort of thing that's going on at all levels. And yeah, you wish there would be a prosecutor who had the good sense to say this is a waste of all of our time and energy. But
maybe we don't do this.
But they get too far deep and they
Pot committed.
Yeah,
Keep on chasing
that's
it.
the right term. Pot committed, literally.
Got to chase the river. Right.
Wait,
I remember when
is nobody go? Are you not talking about this on the double entendre level, which is way funnier, that they're pot committed to a weed case?
Yeah,
that's the. Yeah.
I was going.
But you were just talking about poker.
I was saying I remember the Texas Hold'em craze when it swept our country.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I was green when it came to your weed lingo. I had nothing to talk about.
All right.
That was dope, Joe.
Oh, there we go. There we go. The first one was not. That one was. Good job.
Yeah.
All right.
Different strains.
Yeah. No. Nice. Okay. I feel
amazing.
All right. How are we doing on this? Are we good on this topic?
I don't know. Do you have any more puns? That's the question.
Cool.
Does anybody
That is
have
the
any
pun.
more puns?
I'm okay with passing this.
Okay, bud.
To the left-hand side?
Did anybody catch my okay, bud? See, I was doing the same. Oh, well.
Boo.
Fine.
This is why it shouldn't be
Tomato.
legalized. This is the only reason it shouldn't be legalized, because there'll be more of this.
But for like a minute, and then people will be over it because it wouldn't be funny anymore.
Sure. From that topic to talking about Biglaw. Kathryn, you had a story this week about a major law firm and
so
a decision.
Yeah, people make choices in this life, and we're here to hold them accountable for said decisions. But the One America News Network, OAN, and their parent company, Herring Networks, sued AT&T, the chairman, William Kennard, and DirecTV because DirecTV made the decision not to renew the carriage contract over OAN because, it's OAN. And they filed a lawsuit saying that it was a breach of contract, breach of fair dealing. There was disparagement clauses in the contracts, a bunch of arguments, largely because there's a separate agreement that's in effect. And they said, well, because there's a separate agreement, that we assumed that the original carriage contract would be renewed, and they are alleging over, I think, $1 billion in damages because at present OAN has limited alternative carriage options. Oh, and the disparagement one was also a pretty interesting theory because there's apparently in the carriage agreement there's a disparagement clause. And they are making the allegation that any AT&T owned outlet is bound by the non-disparagement agreement, which includes all the on-air talent. So the fact that HBO's John Oliver has said lots of things about how awful OAN is, when CNN host Jake Tapper said something about OAN as a source of lies masquerading as fact, when Brian Seltzer also of CNN said something about OAN. This is all they're alleging violations of not defamation, mind you, because truth and all that, but of the non-disparagement clause of the contract. But the interesting thing...
I'm going to go ahead and I'm assuming Brian Stetler said that.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's not the big band.
I was going to say.
Fair.
Brian Setzer is a different story.
Yes,
okay, go.
Yes, sorry. You are correct, friend. But one of the interesting parts of the case, at least as listen, lots of folks have covered this lawsuit. It is kind of interesting. We'll see. But from an ATL perspective, figuring out sort of the folks behind it is is kind of the nut there. And it's none other than Biglaw firm because of whatever. It's Vedder Price.
No, there we go. We got to a point.
Wow. Okay. Sorry. I was trying to give a little bit of texture.
Background and texture. I understand.
Listen, it's Vedder Price. My point is that the choices that big law firms make over who their clients are have repercussions. Obviously it's a subject we've talked about before because there are lots of protests and boycotts when big law firms have controversial clients. Also from a recruitment aspect, there are law schools and law student groups that organize boycotts because they don't want to be working at law firms that, make these sorts of controversial representations. And, this is not like no one has to, the OAN doesn't need legal representation, right? It's a choice. They are big pockets here. And, we should be aware of who's making these calls. And unless you want to be working on these sorts of cases, I suppose, in which case you probably already want to work for Jones Day. So
it seems as though it's not a particularly great case. AT&T is a private company. It can choose to renew its contract with whoever it wants to, as
right,
far
because it's not
as
like
carrying.
It's literally up for renewal. It's not like they, broke the agreement or something like that.
The only wrinkle is this non-disparagement thing, which is admittedly weird and gets extra weird when a carrier also happens to own some of the companies that are on the air. So that's a wrinkle. But this is not one of those cases that you would think a firm, especially a big law firm, would want to inject themselves into. I understand billables are fun to get, but it does have problems for you as a brand going forward that you're willing to do this and make enemies of AT&T in the process. Doesn't seem all that bright.
Well, it's also not the first time that Vedder Price has represented OAN. They're also doing some of the work in the $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit that Dominion Voting Services has filed against OAN. And that separate case also plays a role in the instant case, saying that the reason why AT&T decided not to pick it up is because this is a way to deplete the war chest of OAN in their lawsuit against Dominion, and therefore would not be able to further, argue in the defamation case, which is certainly a theory. And I'm not sure that case needs a lot of an assist, but it's interesting. It's the same set of lawyers that are doing the work on behalf of OAN in both of these cases.
Building your book on the back of OAN doesn't seem like
seems like a short-term solution.
That would not be my. If I were giving professional development coaching, I would not probably say that that's your right move. But hey,
listen, I'm sure for those of us who have worked for Biglaw, they're always clients where you're like, oh, I guess this is the side we're on, because those are the folks that tend to have more money. But I think in particular when there are these clients that are so vocal, and particularly in this current political moment, one that seems to be pulling the country in a very particular conspiracy theory laden kind of direction, maybe we give it a little more thought, and listen, I got tons of hate mail over this because that's what happens.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I did not know that.
Because I'm a communist, obviously.
I mean, it's fair.
That's what the people apparently think. And how dare I argue that someone should not have the lawyer that they want?
When did this stupid everyone gets the lawyer they want thing really take off? I've never understood this. Because, you have some rights.
I blame the founding fathers, right?
Well, no, but not. You have a right to, your criminal defense attorneys and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that major corporations have the right to hire whoever they want.
That story of, the British soldier getting a founding father to defend them in court, it takes up an undue amount of space in our collective imagination, right? That's who folks think we are. And I think there's a massive difference between criminal defense attorneys who, I do think every criminal defendant, needs a good attorney. I don't think it's the same in civil court at all. But
God
I think
help you in transactional work.
Certainly not in transactional work, right? But I think that story has taken on an undue import in our collective imagination. I think that people also who don't necessarily think too hard about the different kinds of lawyering that there is, just like lawyers, this is what a lawyer does. I think that that's also part of it, kind of a lack of understanding of sort of the nuances and differences between kinds of law. So I do legitimately blame the founding fathers. So
mean, but it's not John Adams' fault that case has now taken on this role. I'm pretty confident
he knew.
I'm pretty confident that the first 150 years or so in which it didn't have this sort of import, he'd have been just cool with. Yeah, but it's become a thing. I feel like it's largely done that as bigger firms have tried to create some sort of cover for their more objectionable practices.
Well, it's also because we're more transparent now. Right. In the 90s, you didn't hear as much about whose clients, who was representing them. You didn't hear what any big law firm was doing, or unless you were working at the firm or against the firm, you probably just were unaware. There's a lot more media now, a lot more niche media. Hey, ATL. But I think that's part of it. Folks are getting more attention on who their clients are, and I think that's completely fair and justified, but this is the reaction to it.
Yeah. So maybe that's what it's
part
doing.
of it. It's a rich tapestry. Lots of ins, lots of outs, lots of what have you.
That seems like a wrap on that conversation. So with no further ado, waiting to see if there were further ado.
That is my starting Wordle word every day, so...
It was not,
Adieu.
because that's not 5 letters long.
Adieu?
ADIEU?
That is also a word, but
Adieu.
I just said further ado.
Oh, like ADO. Sure.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Fair.
So anyway.
Well, that's what it reminded me of, so whatever.
Well, I'm glad we got to the bottom of that. So I think that we're done for the time being. Thanks for listening. You should be subscribed to the show so that you get episodes when they come out. You should give reviews, stars, write something, helps out, shows that there's some engagement out there. You should be reading Above the Law so you hear about these stories and others as they happen. You should be following us on social media. I'm at Joseph Patrice. She's at Kathryn1. He's at Rights for Rent. You should be listening to our other shows. Kathryn is on the Jabot. I'm on the Legal Tech Week.
Oh, so close.
I'm on the Legal Tech Week Journalist Roundtable. You should be listening to the other offerings of the Legal Talk Network. And that, I think, wraps up everything. Thanks to Posh for sponsoring. And
Peace.
yeah.
I do.